Okay, very cool. So again, if you're just joining us, please put your full name in the chat pod so that we can get your attendance for this. And moving forward, I'll do a QR code like I do for the employability skill series. So sorry, I missed that. Okay, so we are talking about salary negotiation. So this, I'm going to tell you, is something that I personally find very intimidating, and it makes me nervous. So know that if this is something that makes you nervous, you are not alone. But I'm going to kind of walk you through how you can navigate this to, as good as possible or as well as possible. I'm not really sure. But just so I can introduce myself, for those of you that don't know, my name is Watson-Morrow, the Senior Associate Director of Experiential Learning and Employer Relations. Most of you I do know, as I was recognizing your names. I do teach the professional development class here. So if you're in the School of Business, if you haven't had me, you will at some point. So, all right, so salary negotiation. In the previous career coaching series, we've talked about career exploration and, kind of getting our feet wet, setting our goals, knowing where we're going, what we want to accomplish, how to get there. And then we talked about resumes and cover letters, how to always tie that back to the job description, making sure we have the right keywords, making sure that it is not only AI friendly, but human friendly, and making it through the ATS, which stands for Applicant Tracking System. And then last month, we went into interview skills, what you should do before, during, and after your interview, kind of the do's and don'ts and tips and tricks to navigate that. And so now you have the job offer. This is what you've been working for. This is the last part of the interview process. This is like, obviously everything that you've kind of been, like I said, working for. So this is great. Here we are. What do you do now? All right. So, did not mean to do that. Okay. Taylor, are you seeing my screen like as in it's full or is with the notes?
What I can see is the PowerPoint, but it looks like it's not in presentation mode.
So, okay. So let me stop sharing this one and share this one. There we go. Now it's in presentation mode.
You are good to go.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So the golden rule, and it is not somewhat kind of similar to Fight Club. You're not the first to talk. Okay. So never be the first one to say a number. So that is kind of the golden rule. Now, I will tell you that I have heard other experts in the field who have, buku amounts of experience. They have actually said that when they get called for an interview, they will flat out ask them before they even go, like, what is the range for this, or what is the salary for this? I personally would not recommend that, but again, if that feels comfortable for you, because the person that I'm speaking about, he does this whole interview thing, and he does a lot of videos, and he's written a couple books and stuff, but he says, hey, I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to waste my time. If it's, if it's way outside of his salary expectations, there's no point even going on the job interview. But for the young professionals who are just coming out of college and are going to be accepting their first offers, I don't necessarily know if I would go that route. However, if you want to, you can just try and see what happens. I would not recommend it. I would recommend to not be the first to say a number. All right, so when they do ask you, try reversing it. You can say something like, can you tell me the salary range for this position? And this is when they say, like, what are your salary expectations? You could say, can you tell me the range for this position? You could also say something like, I'm looking to stay right where I'm at. However, you're not going to stay right where you're at. You're going to add about 10 to 15% onto your current salary. And then you can say, this is where I'd like to be. So you're still getting a raise. They don't necessarily need to know about that, but that is your expectation. Another thing you could say is, I'm sure your company has a fair and competitive compensation structure. I'd be more comfortable discussing salary once we've determined that this is the right opportunity for both of us. This is called the polite stall. You're not giving a number, you're not, because it depends on when they're asking you this in the interview process, especially if it's right away. I know in my class, I definitely advise against asking what is the pay or what's the salary for this position in the first interview. Again, not being the first to say a number or to bring it up, let the employer bring it up. But I will say, make sure that you do know what the salary is. Just because you saw a range on Indeed or on a job description does not mean that that is what it is. I can tell you that sometimes if an employer doesn't put a salary on there, Indeed might just make it up based on like what is, around. But a student of mine told me like how he saw it. The salary, it was an actual number. It was on, the job description. So when he went through the interview process and when the employer said, is the salary acceptable? It was very acceptable to him because he was going based off of what was on Indeed. However, that was not the correct salary. So when he got, his first paycheck, it was like, wait a minute. And at that point, he kind of felt like he was stuck, which, they asked him, why are you comfortable with the range? So make sure you don't fall into that trap. Make sure that you know exactly what the salary is. Okay. If they ask you for a salary history, first of all, it's none of their business how much you were making at your previous position. Now, you don't want to be rude because that could be off-putting. Remember, they can still just decide not to go with you and it wouldn't be considered discrimination. That just during the interview process, they could say, I just didn't feel like you were the best fit, whatever. So just be careful that you're not being offensive, but in honesty, it's none of their business. So if they ask you, like, what were you making at your last job? You could say, I prefer not to disclose my previous salary, but based on my research and experience, I believe a fair salary for this position would be in the range of whatever the range is. Now, if you're my student, you've heard me say this 100 million bazillion times. You have to do your research. You have to look into the company. You have to know what your position you're applying for. You have to know what the company is that you are applying for. What is their workplace culture? What is their mission and vision? What do they stand for? If they have products and services, what are they? If they have competitors, who are they? The more you know, the more effort you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And part of that research has to be the salary range. You have to keep in mind that if they have a range, it's typically like from beginning, like with no experience, to the peak of your career, or the middle kind of, and then the peak, the end of your career. So you have to be realistic. Coming right out of college, even if you've had a couple internships and you feel like you're really knowledgeable, you are not going to get that peak salary just yet. You have to work up to that. So be realistic, but you have to know what you're talking about. And also know the geographic location. You have to know that in LA or New York City is going to pay vastly different than, say, Monkey's Eyebrow, Kentucky, which, yes, is a real town, by the way, FYI, which is right outside of Boonville, Indiana, which is where I grew up. So I do know I am talking truth here. So when it's more of like a Midwestern small town, they're not going to pay nearly as much as, say, New York City, LA, Miami, something along Chicago, something along those lines. So you have to know the geographic range that you are applying to, but also the range, and know where your experience level falls in that range and be realistic. Another approach you could say is, I would like to focus on the salary range for this position based on the roles and responsibilities and expectations at this company. Is there a salary range we can discuss? If you can avoid like a hard and fast number, that would be my best advice, especially early on in the interview process. All right, so let's talk about a couple tips that I have for you. All right, don't be afraid. So many of us have fear. We are afraid that the employer will take the job offer away, if we don't discuss a number, or if we say a number that might be too high, we're afraid they're just going to, yank it out from underneath us. Don't be afraid of that. Employers, or you guys are on the same team, so don't be afraid of them. You're not going to get refused. The employer's not going to dislike you. They may say, well, that is well outside of our budget. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about how you're going to handle that if the offer is low. but you have to just be careful, but don't be afraid. Know your worth. You have worked very hard. You have done all the things that are required. So know your worth. Be realistic, but know your worth. Okay. So again, don't be afraid. You and the employer are on the same team. They have a problem. Excuse me. They have a problem. You're the solution. You're making yourself the obvious choice, and that you are the answer to their problem by offering your services to fill this role. So you guys are on the same team. So don't feel like you have to be afraid of your employer. Do your homework. Make sure you know the range, geographic location, and be realistic with your ask. Oh, sorry, I wasn't advancing. Okay. Know your man. All right. Your man stands for minimum acceptable number, and your acceptable number add about 10 to 15%. Also, you need to know your operating cash flow. What do you absolutely have to make? What is your rent or your mortgage? Do you have a car payment? What about insurance, your cell phone, your utilities, your entertainment budget? If you don't budget your money and learn to spend your money, it will spend itself. So for those of you who maybe never had to worry about that, you've never had to balance a checkbook, which now everything's digital. I don't even know if people have checkbooks anymore. I mean, I do, but that's because I'm old and I'm okay with it. But you have to know what do you need coming in? Another good rule of thumb that people will talk about, especially in the financial world, like when you're looking at an apartment or you're buying a house or you're, whatever your monthly payment is, whether it's rent or mortgage, you should make at least 3 times the amount of that per month. So you don't want to be what's called house poor. And that's when people they get approved for, money, but they really truly can't afford it, whether it's the amount or the interest rates or something like that. And then you end up being house poor, which means you can't go out to dinner. You can't buy the new shoes that you wanted to, or you can't go see the movie. You can't go on vacation because all of your money is being put into your house. So be careful about that. That's just a little life tip there. You're welcome. Follow me for more sage advice. But know what your cash flow is. What are you putting out every month? I personally keep a spreadsheet. I like to stay on top of everything. I want to know where my money is going, what's coming in, what's going out. I want to make sure that I don't have needless subscriptions that are just costing me money that I don't use anymore, or I'm being double billed for something, or if I return something, I want to make sure that it's getting credited back. So I stay on top of all that. It's just good practice. But I know how much of my money is going out. So I know how much needs to come in on a monthly basis. So that's your operating cash flow. And also everything is negotiable. Now, unless you're going for a government job, and I've talked about this in class a lot, if you're going for say a teaching job, or going for into the military, or going, for the IRS or something like that, they typically have a pay scale. And there really is no negotiation or wiggle room around that. This is what year 1 makes, year 2 makes, so on and so forth. And of course, there's going to be, raises and bumps and maybe bonuses and stuff like that. But unless it's that position, a private or a public institution, everything is negotiable. The more you ask for, the more you're going to get. What you don't ask for, you're never going to get. And not to sound cringy cliche, and Max told me it was Wayne Gretzky because I couldn't remember who it was, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So consider that when you are going through the negotiation phase of accepting an offer. All right, when you have other offers, you now have leverage. Do not be afraid to tell the employer that you have other offers to consider. Remember, they were not afraid to tell you that they were also interviewing other candidates. So you're not going to hurt their feelings. In fact, you're actually going to create a feeling of scarcity. And now you're like, I'm this hot commodity that other people want as well. You're not my only option. And so when you do that, you have leverage. Now, there's a fine line between maybe I need more coffee. Cocky and confident. There's a fine line. So you can't be in all guns blazing, this is my show, you guys are going to give me what I want, but you act as if with your confidence and your worth and everything. But if you have multiple offers, do not be afraid to tell them that. Thank you so much for the offer, which goes into my next one. Always be polite. Show gratitude. Thank you so much for the offer. Reassure them, I'm very interested in this position. I do have a few other offers that I am considering. Now, give them a day and a time that you're going to make your decision, and you need to stick with it. Remember, you asked them, if you took my class, you asked them, when are you going to be making a decision at the end of the interview process? And they said, whenever they were, and you followed up with them. You expected to have an answer when they said they would give you an answer. So you need to show that same politeness to them. Thank you so much for the offer. I'm very interested in the position. I do have a couple other offers that I'm considering. I am making my decision, early next week, and I will get back with you, and stick with it, whatever that is. But feel free to take your time. You do not have to immediately accept or reject an offer. Sit with it for a minute. This is hard. I know some people think if I don't say yes right away, then they're just going to give it to somebody else. They're not. They specifically wanted you. You outshined all of your competition, and they want you. They've offered the job to you. They're going to be okay waiting a couple days. Now, you can't make them wait a month. Again, be realistic. They're not going to wait a month for you to make this decision, but it could very well be that, a week goes by, or maybe, I wouldn't go more than 2 weeks. I really wouldn't. At that point, they're going to be like, hey, we got to move forward. They should take longer than you because, they're the ones that are vetting it, and then they have to, onboard you and train you and do all these things. So be realistic, a couple days, maybe a week at most. Okay. All right. Some more tips. Try to start negotiations on a Thursday. This will usually end by Friday because, the weekend's coming up. They want to get this wrapped up and everything. And people are generally just happier towards the end of the week. You never want to start something on a Friday or a Monday. Friday, it's going to get pushed to Monday. And then Monday, they're coming off of weekend brain. And who knows if they had a good weekend or a bad weekend, or if they're in a good mood or bad mood. You just never know. But Thursday is a really good sweet spot, maybe even Wednesday. But I would typically say, try to start your negotiation on Thursday. This will kind of ensure that it wraps up by Friday. If you happen to receive this offer in person, remain silent. Make the other person speak first. This is like the number one sales hack. They'll say the first person that speaks loses. So when they offer you the position, and then, you say, oh, okay, that's great, I accept, but then kind of stop and let them go on with what the salary is, with the compensation package. Let them start the conversation. So you have to remember to remain silent, be comfortable in the silence, and know that you are the one that has the negotiating powers. Let's say the offer comes in and it's low. All right, first, highlight your value and why you deserve more. Brag about yourself. First of all, show gratitude. Thank you so much. You might even say, okay, that's a generous offer. However, you could say, however you want to handle it. It's always good. You catch way more flies with honey than vinegar. I'm like full of cliches this morning. I must be, I'm on it. Okay, but highlight your value and why you deserve more. What did you do? What have you learned? What certifications do you have? What internships did you shine in? What are some of your accomplishments? You have done these great, wonderful things, and you deserve to be recognized for that. But let's say the offer, they still say no. Go ahead and ask about a sign-on bonus. You're trying to offset. This is part of that leverage. Everything is negotiable. Ask for a sign-on bonus. Say they still say, no, we don't offer that. That's okay. Ask for a performance review in about 3 to 4 months. So they're offering you the salary way low. Well, let me prove myself to you. I know you're highlighting your value. You're talking about all the good things that you're going to do for them. And, they're still not quite sold on you. And then say, okay, give me a chance to prove myself. I would like a performance review in 3 to 4 months, and then we can discuss raising my salary. Let's say they still say, we just don't do that here. You have to be prepared to walk away. That just is what it is. Either you're going to sell yourself short and end up in a position that is not paying you what you're worth, if you don't walk away. It's okay to walk away. This is why you should never start, don't wait. Don't wait until like, a couple of weeks before graduation to start trying to secure a job. Don't leave your current position and then start looking for another job, because you have to be able to be prepared to walk away. And if you are the sole provider of income, whether you're by yourself or you're starting a family, you can't not have that income coming in. You want to make sure that you give yourself plenty of time, that you can search for the right job, because you don't want to just job hop. You don't just want to end in a job because they're paying the bills and you've got to pay your bills. Stay in your current position, no matter how uncomfortable it is, until you can successfully transition from one to the other. And if you play your cards right, you could end one job and maybe even take a week off or 2 weeks off before you start the second job. If that's not the case for you, hopefully you could end your job on Friday and start your new job on Monday. But this is where your planning has to come into play to make sure that you have this buffer that is not going to make you just jumping at any offer because you absolutely just have to pay the bills. All right, so some employer tactics. You're in the interview, you're doing this negotiating, you're kind of going back and forth, and they're trying to say that they don't budge, and you're getting ready to walk away. They might be like, hang on a second, we really want you, let me, and they'll like leave, and they'll be like, I'm going to go talk to, my boss, or I'm going to go talk to the team and see what we can do. They're going to go talk to others, right? They'll come back. They might offer you a little more. If it is still not your asking salary, say, that does help. However, with my experience and the value I bring, I feel I still deserve more. And then you can kind of go from there. If they're not budging and they're like, this is it, maybe, you wanted 75,000, they're only going to pay 50,000 or 55,000, which is a big discrepancy, and say, okay, well, we can pay 60. 15,000 is still a pretty significant discrepancy. Now, from this point, you can either kind of just accept it, or, sorry, thank you so much for your time, show gratitude. Thank you so much, for your time. However, I can't. Know your worth. Whoops, I just lost my lat. And this was something that I had to learn the hard way, because I was interviewing for a position actually before I came to Florida Southern. And most of I was a teacher, K-12 for many, many years. I left, I started my own business. It was not working out for me. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm an educator through and through. And I had applied and interviewed for the job. I got all the way down to the salary negotiation, and it was remarkably below my expectation. But I was so desperate to get out of trying to, my own business and to get back into like the actual workforce. I was willing to accept it. And she actually told me no. She's like, don't do that to yourself. She's like, you're way more valuable than what you are letting on. And so this woman actually saved me from myself. I was willing to take almost like a $20,000 pay cut, which is huge. And so I'm glad it didn't happen, because when that door was shut, I'm not even going to lie, I cried. I felt deflated. I thought, oh my gosh, this isn't working out for me. I'm going to be stuck in this rut. And then Florida Southern came along, and it was like, wow, just trust in the process, if I had taken this other job, I would never have even applied at Florida Southern, obviously, because I would have thought I was in my dream job. But yet my dream job was just waiting behind that closed door, waiting for me to experience that so that I could, get into where I was really being called to. So if that happens, it doesn't feel good, but it's not the end of the world. And know that there is something else out there, something else that's going to be way better for you. All right, so let's kind of review real fast. So shot to fame, we're going to go through each one of these letters. What does this mean? These are the things that we've just been talking about. So shot to fame, S, you're on the same team. H, do your homework. You have to do your research. I'm sure my students are so sick of hearing me say this, but it is imperative that you know that job description inside and out, and then the company. Now, of course, you don't have to be an expert on the company where you could write a whole biography on them or something like that, but know what they stand for, know what the workplace culture is, know what the salary range is, know if they're are there performance reviews, is there, their bonuses, are there advancement opportunities? Is there professional development opportunities? Is there like tuition reimbursement? When the offer isn't just the salary, it's everything. It's everything. You have to consider everything. Know what your operating cash flow is. How much do you need on a monthly basis? And set aside money for play. We're not here just to, go to work and pay bills and die. We're here to enjoy life. What do you like to do? I mean, I personally love to go out to eat. It's one of my favorite things. I love taking my kids out. I love enjoying that. I love traveling. I like just doing just different experiences with my kids. We'll do different road trips. We might stay in different cool places. We'll rent just odd, weird Airbnbs just for the cool experience. I love to do those kind of things. So I have to budget for that. How can I do these things? How can I take my kids on these fun adventures? And also to make sure that we are getting to go out to eat and do the fun things that we want to do. At the same time, still making my monthly payments for everything that, all my expenses. So it's going to vary per person. So make sure that you know what yours is. Start your negotiations on a Thursday. Take your time. Don't rush. Don't rush. Now, if this is the dream job and you have been waiting your whole life for this and the mothership has called you home and this is it, you're so excited and the salary's there and everything's great. Okay, fine. Take it. Take it. But if you need some time to think, if it doesn't quite meet all of your, points that you're hoping to hit, take your time, think it over. If they're not just going to yank the offer just because you said, I need some time to think. Consider your other offers. It's not just the salary. What about what kind of compensation package goes into it? Do they offer benefits, health, dental, vision? Is that stuff important to you? Do you need it? Are you going to be starting a family? Do you already have a family? Is it just you? What about perks? I know I've talked about my friend who works for the New York Yankees. He's a big baseball fanatic. So this was a huge perk for him. He can go to any baseball game anywhere in the country, at any stadium, anytime, get 2 free tickets and go to any game. That's huge for him. So that's a big, big perk. What else do they have? Do they offer a gym membership, tuition reimbursement? Maybe they have free childcare if you're going to have a family. Think about what is all in the offer. It is not just the salary. It's also the commute. It's the workplace culture. It's time off. It's all the stock options, retirement. I know you're young, but you've got to start thinking about retirement now because it does sneak up on you. You're low, there it is. There's retirement. Where'd it come from? And you haven't saved anything. It happens. Trust me. I know this. Don't be afraid. Fear will hold us back. There's nothing to be afraid of. If you tell an employer, let's play, hypothetically speaking, you tell this employer, thank you so much. I really appreciate the offer. I'm very interested in the position. I do have a couple other opportunities that I'm considering, and I will get back with you like in a week. And they say, never mind. Do you really want to work for somebody like that anyway? Like that to me is manipulative. Like it's almost like an all or none, like, this ultimatum. Like if you don't take the offer right this moment, then we're not giving it to you. It seems very manipulative. I personally would not want to work for a company that is going to basically like kind of put their thumb down on me that hard. So consider that. So don't be afraid. If you want to take it, take it. But if you have some other options and you're considering, don't be afraid. Walk away from them anyway if they're going to talk to you that way. Always be polite. Good rule of thumb in all of life anyway. You never know who's who, but also too, the way that you graciously, handle this could also change things. Real life example. When my kids, especially when they were little, if they did something and they got a consequence, maybe it was like, okay, well, you've lost your Xbox for a week, whatever it might be. Depending on how they responded, my kids, if they said, okay, yep, well, I screwed up and, I kind of deserve that. Maybe they didn't say it with that much maturity, but basically they accepted the consequence without argument. They didn't cry and fight and this isn't fair and you don't know what it's like and whatever. If they just accepted the consequence, I would let them sit with that for a minute. And then I would always go back and be like, you know what? I'm so proud of you for how you handled that. In fact, I'm going to cut your consequence in half. You've only lost the Xbox for, 3 days or 3.5 days instead of a whole week, rewarding them for that. That happens too. You handle it gracefully, you're very polite, you show gratitude. Even if they're saying that they can't accommodate you, who knows what might change. But if you were on the call today about emotional intelligence with Greg Shell from Auto Owners, he was kind of talking about we can't be toddlers and throw temper tantrums because we don't get our way. You can't do that. Just graciously, whatever the outcome is, just always, always, always be polite. Know your man. Know your minimum acceptable number plus 10%. You have to have this number in your head. You have to know what this goes into your operating cash flow and what you need to make monthly. And it doesn't have to just be your necessities. Be comfortable. And if that means that if you want to take this job and it's paying less than what your man is, you might have to make some adjustments. Whether you're going to live in a smaller house or not drive as fancy a car, that's up to you. But what I would do is you need to know what your minimum number is, and hopefully you get more than that. That's where that 10% kind of comes into play. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there. But what is your I have to walk away number? Know that everything is negotiable. Okay, everything from the salary to the paid time off to sick time, bonus, sign-on bonus, I don't know, stock option, everything's negotiable, everything. If you don't ask, you'll never know. And again, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if you ask? They're going to say no. All right. So some mistakes to avoid. Don't be the first to disclose a specific amount. Excuse me. Flip it back onto them. So you could say, sorry, it's still early in the process and I'm still learning what my roles and responsibilities are. So my expectations are flexible at the moment. When considering a new position, there's a lot I'd like to consider other than just pay. Yes, you can be money motivated, but hopefully there's more into it than that. Okay. You could also say, what have you budgeted for this role? This is something my mentor encourages us to say when I talk to him about what are best practices for the interview process. What have you budgeted for this role? You're flipping it back onto them. You can ask, what is the salary range for this position? What are comparable salaries for people already in this role? Now, typically organizations will not disclose salary amount. That's just like something that you just do not talk about. And that is Fight Club. You do not talk about that in the workplace. I'm not going to go to anybody on my team and be like, hey, how much do you make? How much do you make? That is like asking a woman how much she weighs. Or asking somebody how old they are. And if you guys know Josh Burns, you can tell him he is still kicked out of my class. That's an inside joke, but those that know, no. So you just don't talk about it. So you couldn't ask what are the comparable salaries. Don't expect them to be like, oh, Susie in HR makes this much and Bob in IT makes this much, but they may say, well, this is the range. Because you're flipping it back onto them, trying to get them to give you a number, because the fear is we're either going to lowball ourselves or we're going to totally outprice ourselves. So we've got to find that sweet spot, and that's going to come with your research, but also too with your confidence and experience, because the more experienced you are, the more comfortable you're going to feel asking for what you're worth. When you're first coming out of college, it may very much be like, I have no idea, but that's why your research comes into play. All right, other mistakes to avoid. Don't wait until the final step of the interview process to discuss compensation. Now, I know I told you that you need to wait for them to be the one to bring it up, but again, you're not going to accept the offer until you know what the compensation package is. But if you can start negotiating this, following their lead, letting them bring it up first, but hopefully you're not waiting to the very last thing, like, okay, great. Like somebody's interviewing me, they're like, oh, Megan, this is awesome. This is great. We're so excited to welcome you onto the team. We'd like to offer you the position, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm over here like, okay, great. And they're like, okay, so this is what it pays. Like, that's an uncomfortable position to be in. You should be negotiating before they actually say, okay, yes, we've agreed. Now here's the offer. Companies do it differently, but hopefully you can avoid waiting until the very last step. All right, don't just focus on the salary. know what your worth is and ask yourself, what pay would make me feel valued in the long run? Ask yourself, how does this job get me where I want to go developmentally? Your job, all of your jobs that you take should be pushing you towards the higher and higher goals that you are trying to obtain. You know, if your goal is to get your CPA and open your own accounting firm, you're not going to come out of college with a degree in accounting, start working in an accounting firm, and then take a job working in HR, and then take a job working over in marketing, and then take a job over back into accounting, and then try, it's is that, if that is pushing you towards getting your CPA and having your own accounting firm, then by all means do that. But when you take all these like random various jobs that are not in line with the progression of where you're trying to reach your like long-term career goal, it's going to hold you back. So stay on track and make sure that every job that you are taking, whether it's an advancement or whether it's with a different company, that it is pushing you towards your personal long-term career goals. Because at the end of the day, when you've done all the hard work, you want to sit back and be like, I've made it. I'm here. I'm doing what I love and what I've always dreamed of. That's the dream. That's the goal. You can ask yourself, is the scope of the job reasonable for the expected salary? You know, when you're looking at all of your roles and responsibilities and then the compensation package are they asking you to do two people's jobs, but they're only going to pay you for one? So is it really reasonable? Are you expected to work 80 hours a week, but you're only going to get paid 50,000 a year? You know, like, is it reasonable? So you have to know that. Again, that's from your research and you're doing your homework. And what is your walkaway number? What is your What is your minimum acceptable number? What is that walkaway? Thank you so much, but no. It's the same like when you go buy a car or when you are maybe bidding on a house. You know, if you want to go out and buy a house, you're going to have this negotiating back and forth. At some point, you have to be able to say, thank you, but no. And you're going to have to walk away. That's difficult, but you have to be prepared for that. All right, so I was just creating this. I've been doing this particular presentation without like an actual visual presentation, so I didn't get to these parts. I'm going to add these for the next week. But if you get asked on the phone, okay, you can ask on the phone. This is what I was saying earlier about where your comfort level is. So if you get called to go on an interview and you really are excited about the position and they setting up, hey, before we do this interview, you can ask, what is the salary range for this position? I've never done that. That is one of the professionals out there who's like the big interview guru. He says that he does that. That's up to you and your comfort level. I'm just throwing that out there. That is something that you could potentially, go for. Now, a good closing question, because when you're in the interview process, again, if you're in my class, you've heard me say this, the interview is a back and forth exchange between you and the interviewer, because you are interviewing them just as much as they are interviewing you, because you want to make sure that is a good fit for you as well. So at the very end of the interview, 9 times out of 10, the interviewer is going to say, hey, do you have any questions for us? It's just like they're always going to start the interview with, tell me a little bit about yourself, right? They're going to close it with, do you have any questions for us? So one of those good kind of closing questions could be like, I'm really interested in this position. Have you decided on a salary range for this position? That's your comfort level. You can go with that or not. That is you taking the lead and not waiting for them to bring up the salary question. I'm just giving you options. I don't know if I would do that, but if you feel comfortable and you feel confident, you're more than welcome to do this. All right. Another pro tip, never negotiate via email. That immediately will get shut down. It's impersonal. You cannot hear tone. You cannot see body language or facial expressions. This could immediately just get you shut down before you even get started. So either on the phone or in person. And if they, email you to, to say, hey, like, I'd like to offer you the job. What are your salary? If they started over email, just write back, again, with gratitude and minding your manners and everything. Thank you so much. I'm very interested. I'm very excited, show your enthusiasm. When would be a good time? Don't even ask. Don't say like, could we talk about this over just say, when would be a good time to call you to discuss the job offer? Or when would be a good time for me to come in and meet with you to discuss the job offer? Don't do it over email. That would be, that you're just giving over way too much of your power. And that is what I have for you about salary negotiation. So I would like to open this up if anybody had any questions. I know I see a lot in the chat box. I think it's everybody's names. If you are joining us or you missed it, please put your name, your full name in the chat pod so that I can mark your attendance for this event. So any questions at all? Okie dokie. Well, you know who I am, where I am, how to find me. Please feel free to make an appointment with me on Handshake if you wanted any individual advice, tips, or tricks, or practice. Feel free to email me, or you can always stop by my office. I'm on the 3rd floor of the Becker Business Building. My office number is 323. If you don't have any questions, guys, thank you so much for joining Salary Negotiation and Career Coaching. Have a wonderful day. You're welcome. Thank you for coming.